The Nintendo 64, Nintendo's third console and the last console released in the fifth generation, sharing gaming space with the Sony PlayStation, Sega Saturn, Atari Jaguar, and the Panasonic 3DO. The Nintendo 64 is one of the most beloved systems of that era, yet it remains one of the easiest consoles to collect for. But why? This is an episode of Retronomics, a collecting forecast series that takes a look at the factors affecting the prices in video games, and in this episode we're going to take a look at the Nintendo 64. I'll go over a brief history, explain system issues, and give a rundown of the Nintendo 64 library's prices to determine if they'll go up, down, or stay the same. So let's take a look at the Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64, codenamed Project Reality and then Ultra 64 until it was released in 1996, was met with spectacular fanfare. While Sony and Sega had a full year head start on Nintendo this generation, Nintendo would make a splash in two ways. First, the controller. 3 prongs. Bucking the traditional candy bar style of NES and SNES, the controller was designed for 3D games with an analog joystick right in the middle. While Sega had beaten Nintendo to the punch with its analog stick, Nintendo made it standard, setting the tone for games that would be available on the console. And second, Mario 64. It's Mario in 3D, and it was the ultimate tech demo to show off the new hardware and bring Mario into the third dimension. Mario 64 would also be good enough to dismiss any concerns that Nintendo didn't have a solid launch window. The Nintendo 64 would only launch with 2 games, Mario 64 and Pilot Wings 64. 3D graphics at the time were amazing. Playing in an open world in Mushroom Kingdom was unreal, and the offerings only improved over time. Mario Kart 64, GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie, and Star Fox 64, and also 2 Zelda offerings with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. All amazing games that defined the genre. Then the graphics got better with the expansion pack. Included with Donkey Kong 64 because of a game-breaking glitch, the RAM boost was essential for playing that game and enhanced some of the games in the Nintendo 64 library. While the Nintendo 64 has some of the most iconic games of that generation, the cartridge-based system strained Nintendo's relationship with developers and would limit the amount of third-party games that would come to the Nintendo 64. At the end of Nintendo 64's life cycle, only 296 unique titles were released in North America. Compare that to the 1,300 titles for the PlayStation 1 and 290 for the Sega Saturn. One of the coolest things about Nintendo 64 collecting is the system variations. The original Nintendo 64 came in a dark gray finish and came bundled with a gray controller, but Nintendo would introduce the Fantastic line, a series of colorful, transparent Nintendo 64s that you could buy if you were so inclined. None of these consoles have a technical difference except the later models can't output RGB. Each system would come with a matching controller, and there was even a Pokemon system with a molded Pikachu on the top with its own exclusive controller. In addition to the system variations, there were also 15 different controller colors sold separately with a couple of exclusive controllers, like this Donkey Kong 64 banana controller available only through Nintendo Power, and the Millennium controller only limited to 1,000 units and only sold through Nintendo Power. While getting a complete set of games is pretty easy, some of these controllers and systems will cost more than the majority of the library combined. Because it only takes cartridges, the Nintendo 64 is pretty durable. There aren't too many issues that the Nintendo 64 has that can't be solved by just cleaning the contacts or making sure that the RAM cartridge is properly seated. And speaking of the RAM cartridge, if you're buying a Nintendo 64, you'll probably want to get a RAM cartridge. As mentioned earlier, there are a couple of games that will not function without the RAM card. Donkey Kong 64, Perfect Dark, and Majora's Mask. And there are a number of games that are improved with the pack, including Rogue Squadron. If you're looking for an official expansion pack, that will set you back about $50 to $60, and they're kinda hard to come by nowadays, but luckily there are third-party solutions that do the job for about $35. The biggest issue will come with controllers. The analog stick is the biggest breaking point, especially if you had a copy of Mario Party 2. Finding working sticks is pretty hard nowadays, but luckily they aren't too hard to fix yourself. A GameCube style joystick is available for about $10 and it's a little bit more sensitive than the original Nintendo 64 joystick, but you get used to it pretty quickly, and it's incredibly easy to install. If you prefer a more standard controller, the Retro Fighters Nintendo 64 controller might be a better fit. There is also a HoriPad reproduction that will be coming soon as well, and so there are a ton of new options for Nintendo 64 players old and new. The prices of Nintendo 64 games is what makes it the easiest system to collect for. A lot of great games are available for reasonable prices. Only 6 games are above $100, and when you compare that with the Sega Saturn or TurboGrafx-16, that's highly uncommon for systems with smaller libraries. The craziest is that 97% of the library can be had for less than $60 a game, and 90% below $40 and 75% below $20. With the TurboGrafx-16 video that I did, I took 5 low, 5 mid-range, and 5 top games, and then I did a price prediction that way. But the Nintendo 64 has a lot of games that fall within 50 cents to $1 of each other, so it's harder to pick which games are volatile or not. So I took 10 games, popular must-have titles for the system across price ranges, and I added NBA Live 99 in there as the bottom price game as sort of a control. Starting with NBA Live 99, not much to see here, but the price did drop to $2.16 in March, but sprung right back up to $3.51 in April. The price is trending down, but I don't think that it'll go any higher than $4 anytime soon. Star Fox 64, now this is the same price that it was back in January of 2018, and it's on its way down. And if you haven't picked up this game, I would wait to buy it in July, and you'll save a couple of dollars that way. The price tends to peak around March. And also make sure that you pick up a Rumble Pack because this game is amazing with it. GoldenEye, the console shooter that made console shooters popular. The price is about right, hovering between $16 to $25. Prices seem to cool down in the summer months, but a price between that range is a good deal, and I don't see it rising higher than $25 anytime soon. Banjo-Kazooie, now this price has been climbing as time goes on and peaking at $25 in March of 2019. It will probably go to $30 or more by the end of the year given the price trends. It's also possible that we'll see a rare replay ported to the Switch this year since Nintendo and Microsoft have been really buddy-buddy lately. Super Smash Bros., one of the most popular Nintendo 64 games for a very long time. Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64 has dropped in price for a while now, and it could be because Smash Ultimate is occupying everybody's time, but this game has gone down in price continually over the years, and it's its lowest since 2012. Expect this game to maintain its price for the rest of the year. Super Mario 64, a launch title that still holds up to this day. This price will probably keep around $30 with price dips during the summer and rising around the holiday season. Mario Party 2, now this game has been losing value the most out of all of the games listed. Most of the games on this list peaked the same in March, but not Mario Party 2. Peaking at $50 last March and only peaking to $35 this March, the price will probably continue to trend down and settle by the end of this year. Expect to see a $25 Mario Party 2 by this time next year. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now this is the collector's edition gold cartridge, so the price is higher than the regular version, but both are starting to rise in value. The only remake is on the 3DS with no signs of the re-release for the Nintendo Switch, so this game can keep its value fairly high. Peaking at $55 in March, this game will hold its value for a while, but probably won't climb higher than $60 in the next year. Conker's Bad Fur Day. Now I did a review on this a year ago, and even then it was kind of pricey, but it looks like it's getting more stable year over year. The price peaks at about $70, and with Rare Replay having this game available along with Banjo-Kazooie, it's likely it won't spike any higher over the next year. Now we're getting into the $100 plus club with Worms Armageddon. There's a better version out there, but this is one of the rarest games on the Nintendo 64. Pricing at $141 as of April, this price seems to be trending up, but it's possible that the game will drop in November again before picking up again by Christmas. And then, the most expensive and arguably rarest Nintendo 64 game available, Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut. A blockbuster exclusive rumored to only sell 20,000 copies, this version added 4 new characters and a couple of other gameplay tweaks to make it different from Clay Fighter 63 1/3. Peaking at $412 last year, the price of this game remains stable for the rest of 2019. So if you're planning on getting this game, you might as well get it sooner or later, because rare games like these, especially dead franchises, tend to be unpredictable after a couple of years. But beware of fakes. This is one of the most counterfeited Nintendo 64 games out there. While game prices have been trending the same, one unique feature of the Nintendo 64 is the variation of consoles. And like the games, those prices have been trending about the same way. Some spikes here and there, but mostly predictable and probably won't change dramatically in the next year. Price for the base Nintendo 64 console, however, is unreliable because all the listings on pricecharting.com are for manuals for the system, but you can look on eBay and you can find one for about $60 to $70, and that price includes everything that you need to play for the Nintendo 64, and some of the cheaper consoles don't come with a power, AV cables, or even the jumper pack. That wraps it up for this episode of Retronomics on the Nintendo 64. Let me know in the comments below if you plan on getting a complete Nintendo 64 set, or if you're content with the 20 to 30 good games for the system. And if you like this video, give it a like. It really lets YouTube know that they can suggest it to others. And if you're new here, I have a backlog of Retronomics episodes like this one for you to enjoy, and have more on the way. So if that's something that you're interested in, consider subscribing for future content. Also, a huge thank you to my Patreon supporting this channel. You can find out more info on the Patreon in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Super Nicktendo, and I'll see you next time.